So many people have been coming to my channel who are really serious about going off-grid and starting their own homestead. But one of the things that I haven't addressed yet is the importance of any successful homestead having a pantry. When you talk about being self-sufficient and controlling your own food, be it if you're hunting it or fishing it or harvesting it from your garden or even buying things in bulk and storing it, that pantry is really going to be part of that homestead and really, really important. So we started preparing for the pantry many years before we even moved off-grid here. And we did a lot of research and we learned a lot of things, a lot of do's and don'ts. So I'm going to take you into my pantry today and show you what works for us, and hopefully, I hope you get a couple tips that you can take home with you before you start your off-grid homestead setup. All right, come along and we'll see what we got.
In my pantry, the number one thing you're probably going to see is a lot of these food grade containers, and I've got a lot of beans, and I also store a lot of rice. Now, we choose beans because we love beans. They're low in fat, they're low cost, and dried beans actually last indefinitely. We did a lot of research on this, and we store them, most of them, in their regular containers that they came in, the bags. We don't put them in any type of Mylar bags. But what I do is when I start getting a lot of bulk, when I start getting past probably about 100 pounds of whatever beans I have, then I'll go to my canning a lot of it. And you've seen my videos before. I've got white beans, I've got kidney beans, I've got my black beans. Just did a whole bunch of pinto beans too. So that way it's easily accessed in my pantry, and when I want to do a real quick meal, it's garden season, I throw those beans in there. It's a good source of protein. So for storage, long-term, beans really are awesome. The other thing I store in this pantry is rice. Now, some of the rice are in my 5-gallon buckets. We started off with, when we started doing a lot of research, we bought Mylar bags, and we did throw in the oxygen absorbers, and we did suck it out with our shop vac, and we sealed it with our own iron. And back in Wisconsin, we did a lot of our flours and our rices and dried potatoes in the Mylar bags. They are great. They are cheap, they're economical, and for long-term storage, they really do work. But after we did more research, we started to learn that rice actually too can store a long time in their own containers. I've read where 5 years rice can be good in their original package. And rice also in an airtight container will last 20 to 25 years. So the one thing you can do is buy those oxygen absorbers, and I believe like in a 5-gallon pail you throw in I think it's a 1,500 to 2,000 cubic centimeter oxygen absorber, and you put your lid on. That rice is going to last a long time. So 5-gallon pails, keep a lot of your stuff. You can keep it in their original containers. About our canning. And then the other thing I wanted to point out in my pantry too is when we first started getting prepared to come off-grid, we did buy a lot of these Augustin Farm cans. They are really nice, but they're really expensive. And as we learned, I'm kind of regretting buying them now, because you see we have long grain brown rice. I buy this stuff in bulk, 25 to 50 pounds, and it doesn't need to be sealed in little cans like this. This was kind of a waste to buy because, as you can see now, I just got my rice in the 5-gallon buckets if I'm concerned about it not lasting. And the other stuff I just keep in its original package. Never had a problem with my rice going bad. But again, your pantry has to be cool, and that no moisture in your pantry is very important for long-term storage. So do you really need to buy all of these prepping type of cans? Well, if you're on a budget, I'd say no. We bought some specialty items like the scrambled egg mix. Probably not bad to have. The margarine powder. I'm actually canning my own butter, so I really don't need that anymore. Honey powder, we actually found a source when we moved out here of our honey, local source, great source. So we really don't need the honey powder anymore. But it's nice to have. But like I said, if you're starting a pantry, forget about those products. Go and buy yourself some bulk rice, white, brown, wild, whatever, your lentils, your beans. That'll be the basis for your pantry, and those items really do stay good for
Dehydrated
forever.
foods, when we did live in Wisconsin, we had full electricity. I dehydrated a lot of stuff. I have apples in my, I used to do a lot of banana chips and my mushrooms, onions, you name it, and I would throw it in the Excalibur. If you do live on grid and you've got a lot of stuff that you can get cheap at the store or you grow yourself, dehydrate it. And you can store it in a canning jar, which really works good, or Mylar bags also works good. I've seen that jars are really getting expensive. Really expensive, like pint jars now between $10 and $12, and at least here on the off season they're getting hard to find. So I've been hitting the Goodwill stores and buying them in our local grocery store, which has the smallmouth ones, but they don't have the big ones. So before we moved, one of the things you might want to do is stock up on canning jars. If you know that you're going to be going off grid and you want to start preparing now, and that's what we did many years ago, I'd go and I'd watch for sales, and I would just go wipe out the canning jars. I would come home with a carload. So we pre-bought a lot of stuff before we started our pantry. We pre-bought a lot of Mylar bags. We pre-bought canning jars. We tried to get as many food grade containers as possible. We had a friend who actually worked for a company that hauled food. So we used him as a resource. Find a resource, or go to a restaurant or a supermarket that makes these are cake and donut icing containers. Try to find those resources before you move, and you can stock up and bring the stuff with you. It's a long process. You don't want to be moving onto your homestead without any supplies. So make sure you stock up. Okay, and one last thing. As you can see, I don't have a lot of store-bought and canned goods, and we started buying a lot of store-bought and canned goods many years ago, and this is kind of the living and learning thing. Store-bought and canned goods are great to have, but since I do my own canning, I really don't have a need for them anymore. But just know that when you buy your canned goods, they all have an expiration date, and this one is actually from 2011. These last forever. Don't pay attention to the expiration dates. And, maybe some of you are going to freak out when I say that, but this is from 2011. I open up those green beans and they're fine. So I used to go to an outlet store and buy outdated food. Nothing wrong with outdated food, and I'm sure a lot of you already know that. So if you are going with store-bought and canned goods, don't worry about the dates. You'll probably get a good buy on the ones that are outdated, because once they're canned, they really are going to last for a long time. Okay, the other thing about storing your foods is when you talk about the setup of your pantry, you're going to have to remember moisture is really bad for food items. So make sure your pantry is moisture free. The other thing is the temperature. Now, it's cool in here. This is part of our house, but this back wall here is cement, and I don't know if you can see it, but it's a cement wall. And back here, because we have a house that is butted up to the mountain and dirt, it's nice and cool in here. So even though this is part of our house, we just keep that door shut, and it gets cool in here. All right, so that was it in a nutshell, and I hope you enjoyed the tour of the pantry. I may have missed some things, but just wanted to get you guys an overview quickly on some of the things that you need to be looking for. So hopefully you will start stocking up on all these things before you move, and really getting a plan before you really unplug yourself or take the leap and go off grid and start your own homestead. All right, I thank you guys for watching and subscribing, and I hope this little tutorial of my pantry helped.